Someone was lying on a bed, wondering if infinite potential could lead to infinite gains, if it was possible to fill their minds and spirits endlessly, and if that path would lead them to true equality and justice. The guy's eyes were bleak as he remarked that it was a shame. He closed his eyes as he commented, to the very end, his dreams never came to fruition. Suddenly, the guy was reincarnated. The guy, whose name was Jiang Li, became a sovereign, the number one in the 9 provinces, and it took him 500 years to reach the peak, the Grand Ascension stage. Jiang Li was floating up in the sky, and the people below looked up at him. A man noted that it was about to begin, and as the lady observed that Jiang Li was going through the immortality tribulation, the man inquired if the immortal ladder would appear at that time. The clouds in the sky suddenly started to swirl, and multiple dark lightning strikes appeared. All the lightning merged, and they were about to hit a single spot. The powerful lightning hit Jiang Li, but as the lightning continued to hit him, electrifying his entire body, Jiang Li seemed unfazed. The lightning was so powerful that the ground was destroyed when it hit it. The dust that was scattered all over the place started to settle down. It revealed a huge crater on the ground that had been burnt. Meanwhile, rays of light began appearing in the sky, and Jiang Li's figure could be vaguely seen. The clouds continued to clear up, and Jiang Li could be seen clearly. One of the audience lamented that, alas, the ladder didn't appear once again, and it was already the 15th time Jiang Li has gone through the tribulation. A young man questioned if ascending to the immortal realm was even possible, and an old lady asserted that, of course, because according to the tales of those who have seen the immortal ladder, it was absolutely true and that the ascension of numerous cultivators was commonplace millennia ago. She explained that as long as one survives through the tribulation, a ladder from the immortal realm will descend to welcome them, but they just don't understand why the ladder doesn't show up anymore. While Jiang Li was still floating in the sky, the old lady declared that without it, the route to immortality is blocked. Jiang Li sighed and murmured that even in that world of cultivation, he couldn't ascend, so it was such a shame. Remembering what he went through, Jiang Li admitted that he had no cheat skills there, so all he could rely on was his own efforts, wisdom, and luck to overcome that obstacle, and he had just reached the Grand Ascension stage. Jiang Li started descending, and he pondered that if he had cheat skills, maybe it would have been easier. He stated that it was whatever, because the arduous path bore its own rewards. Suddenly, a system gave a notification that a host had been detected, so the counterattack system activated. Jiang Li's eyes went wide in surprise when he saw his name displayed on the system screen. He quickly looked at the other screen that displayed his age, which was 518, and another screen showed that his identity was the current sovereign. Jiang Li was speechless as he looked at the system screen that was displaying his cultivation, which was at the Grand Ascension stage. He calmly asserted that the system appeared too late, but the system notified Jiang Li that its name was the counterattack system and that it would help him defeat all those who looked down on him. Jiang Li was intrigued when he read about the counterattack system. The system requested that Jiang Li accept his newbie gift package, and Jiang Li agreed that he would accept. The system screen suddenly began to glitch. The system gave Jiang Li 10 top-grade Kai gathering pills, which are highly effective for the Kai cultivation stage. A fragment of the book 4 ounces can move 1,000 katas, which is the secret of the Dao sect. That would make one invincible at the Kai cultivation stage and could be completed in exchange for 100,000 points, and a top-grade foundation pill that aids in establishing a perfect foundation in the Kai cultivation stage. Jiang Li's current point was 0, and he looked so disappointed when he saw that the book was useful for the Kai cultivation stage. Jiang Li inquired of the system what his current cultivation stage was, and the system replied that it was the Grand Ascension stage, so Jiang Li questioned if the newbie gift package was given to him by mistake, and he remarked that it was for the Kai cultivation stage when he should have received one for the Grand Ascension stage. The system informed Jiang Li that the inspection was complete and there was no mistake, so Jiang Li inquired of the system what his cultivation stage was, and the system responded that it was the Grand Ascension stage. Jiang Li queried the system what stage the newbie gift package was suitable for, and as the system replied that it was for the Kai cultivation stage, Jiang Li questioned if it was given to him by mistake, but the system still replied that there was no mistake. Jiang Li inquired about his cultivation stage again, and the system replied that it was the Grand Ascension stage and there was no mistake, which annoyed Jiang Li, and he sarcastically remarked that he could see that the system could answer questions. The system announced to Jiang Li that a newbie mission had been given and that the mission could not be refused or evaded. It notified Jiang Li that the penalty for failure was that he would not be allowed to enable the remaining functions of the system. And the system functions included the store, spiritual Kai infusion, inner demon evasion, and teleportation. The teleportation caught Jiang Li's interest. The system announced to Jiang Li that his mission was to defeat Jiang Yixing, a guy relying on his status as the clan elder's son who has bullied Jiang Li multiple times. Jiang Li remembered Jiang Yixing from when he first arrived there. He recalled that the original owner of his body was born into the Jiang family of the Great Zhou dynasty's king city, and he was born as the son of the patriarch, but unfortunately, his parents died young. Jiang Yixing relied on his father's influence to become the new patriarch, and he was the most talented of the whole clan, so he bullied others, especially Jiang Li. The original owner of Jiang Li's body was a coward, so he didn't dare resist Jiang Yixing. He could only resent him in his heart, and in the end, he perished under Jiang Yixing's savagery. When Jiang Li was reincarnated into that body, after understanding the situation he was in, He decided that his family would only bring him harm and no gain, so he left. Jiang Li stated that Jiang Yixing's talent would only take him to the foundation stage, which is about 140 years, so by that time, he must be deceased. He also mentioned that the most important thing, no matter how he thought of it, was the newbie mission, which was not something he could complete at that time. Jiang Li decided to inquire of the system what era they were in, and the system responded that it was the year 430 in the Flame calendar. Jiang Li mentioned that it was currently the 4800th year of the Flame calendar, and he noted that it was no wonder that it was called the counterattack system because that broken system should have appeared 500 years before. The system requested that Jiang Li adhere to the time determined by it, and Jiang Li replied that he wanted to change the mission. But the system responded that the mission cannot be changed, so Jiang Li stated that Jiang Yixing was already dead. But the system just requested him again to adhere to the time determined by it. Jiang Li remarked that he was currently in the Grand Ascension stage, and he asked the system if it would be even suitable to be called counterattacking if he fought Jiang Yixing, who's in the Kai cultivation or foundation stage, and the system just requested that Jiang Li complete the novice mission, so Jiang Li insisted that the system should restart. But the system just repeated the request, so Jiang Li demanded that the system should be uninstalled, and the system just repeated the request. Jiang Li let out a sigh as he noted that he felt weird the moment he heard counterattacking because he is ranked number 1 in the 9 provinces, so he wondered who he was going to counterattack. He decided to just forget it and mentioned that he should try and see if the system has any other uses, so he asked the system if it could send him to the immortal realm with the teleportation function. The system responded that it would unlock the teleportation function to the immortal realm in the future. Jiang Li got excited, and he asked the system if it could send him over at that moment, and he declared that, as expected of a Goldfinger, it was still a little bit useful. But Jiang Li was disappointed when the system answered that he had to first complete the novice mission, and Jiang Li suggested that it could send him to the immortal realm first, and from there, he could go to the netherworld to find Jiang Yixing and win in a fight with him, and the mission would be completed. The system responded that Jiang Li must first complete the novice mission, so Jiang Li asked if they couldn't work something out because he couldn't possibly fight someone who was already dead, but the system just replied with the same thing. Jiang Li shook his head and commented that it was a lousy system, and he observed that he would just go back to his old home and take a look. He theorized that perhaps Jiang Yixing was still alive because, despite his mediocre talent, he might have been consuming longevity pills non-stop, or maybe he was enlightened by an expert and broke through the nascent soul stage, increasing his longevity. As Jiang Li flew away, he acknowledged that he also depended on his own efforts in cultivation, and a bit of help from his heaven spiritual root and immeasurable Tao physique, and managed to reach the Grand Ascension stage. A few moments later, Jiang Li arrived at the Great Chu dynasty's Jiang family in King City. A few incense were lit in front of a memorial. Jiang Li was using body concealment to enter the place, and when he saw the memorial, he asserted that Jiang Yixing was dead, so he wondered what he should do. If he should beat up someone who is also named Jiang Yixing or force someone to change their name to Jiang Yixing and beat him up. While Jiang Li was busy wondering if he should visit Jiang Yixing's tomb, an old man came out of the house, and people bowed down to him. Jiang Li observed the old man as he walked past him. He surmised that the person seemed to look vaguely similar to Jiang Yixing, so he should be either his son or his grandson. Jiang Li wondered if beating the old man would count as beating Jiang Yixing. Meanwhile, a lot of people in the city were flocking around a huge statue that looked similar to Jiang Li. The foot of the statue was crowded, and it was filled with different kinds of people. A lady was kneeling and requesting the Emperor Jiang in heaven to bless her and give her the strength to break through her cultivation bottleneck soon. On the other hand, an old man was guiding a child and remarked that they should pray to Emperor Jiang to get some of the spiritual aura from him. The child asked her father who Emperor Jiang was, and the old man explained that they would have to start with the history of the 9 provinces, as the emperor, who is revered across all 9 provinces, holds a unique and respected position. The old man stated that one of Emperor Jiang's duties is to mediate between powers to prevent the loss of innocent lives in cultivator conflicts. He observed that at the peak of cultivation, one could overturn mountains and seas without a single thought. So if there are 2 such cultivators fighting with their lives on the line, it will unleash a catastrophe capable of annihilating heaven and earth across the 9 provinces. The old man recounted that when the old emperor passed and his successor was undecided, the ancient cult and imperial family waged a fierce war, which affected half of the 9 provinces, and anyone who dared to intervene was eliminated by both parties. He disclosed that it was until the new emperor, Jiang Li, stepped forward and carried the wishes of the people and killed the lords of both the ancient cult and the imperial family, and only was the calamity suppressed. Jiang Li was listening as the man mentioned that Emperor Jiang was kind because, although he could wipe out all the countries with his own strength, he did not do that, and instead, he allowed the different countries to develop and expand while he himself continued to just guard the continent of the 9 provinces silently. Jiang Li clarified that it was not exactly how it happened, as it was just not worth it to be in charge all the time. He indicated that all cultivators have a side that chases after immortality, but also another side that is filled with courage and fighting spirit, so suppressing either of them isn't going to work as a long-term plan as one needs to give the cultivators a path of fighting. Jiang Li asserted that it was why the first-generation emperor set down a policy that there would be no suppression, and he allowed the imperial family and sects to thrive independently within the 9 provinces, encouraging, supporting, and competing with each other, advancing together. He suggested that it was why an increasing number of geniuses are emerging in the 9 provinces, which also forms the foundational structure of the continent of the 9 provinces, which was made up of thousands of small kingdoms and the 9 great imperial families. Jiang Li maintained that among them, there are great dynasties that have survived throughout history and never weakened, such as the Great Zhou dynasty, where the Jiang family resides. He mentioned that, back to the topic, Qing City was really flourishing. Looking at the statue, Jiang Li remarked that it was already emitting the power of faith. But Jiang Li noted that after he reached the Grand Ascension stage, the power of faith was no longer useful to him. He disclosed that he even went so far as to specially forge a green bronze cauldron to store the power of hope from the people, leaving it to the next generation emperor. Jiang Li handed something to an old man and instructed that he should give him another 2 sticks of candied hawthorn, and the old man agreed. Suddenly, Jiang Li noticed the people behind him. One declared that it had been 10 days and inquired why the city lord was still not willing to send people out to look for their children. Another asserted that their children must still be in Qing City, so they implored that the city lord crack down on the human traffickers. And another proposed that they should let them meet the city lord. Jiang Li observed those people. A man, who seemed to be the city lord, opened the door, and he asked the people how they could make such a fuss right before the Jiang family's ancestral worship day, and if they had no shame. And he stated that his hands were currently full, so there was no way he could have time to handle all of them. One of the people was enraged, and as he asked the city lord if he stated that he wouldn't send anyone to help, he asserted that it was unacceptable. But another man stopped him and advised that they should not do anything rash because if they get into trouble, they won't be able to do anything to help. Jiang Li approached the man and asked about those people and what was going on, and the man revealed that they were all people from nearby cities. The man explained that those people have all lost their children and have been searching all the way there to Qing City. Jiang Li asked if the Jiang family's ancestral worship was so important that the city lord didn't even care about that matter and if the city lord's duty was just to serve the Jiang family. And the man hurriedly shushed Jiang Li, asked him where he was from, and cautioned that he shouldn't talk so loudly. The man whispered to Jiang Li and suggested that, as a piece of advice, he shouldn't meddle in affairs beyond his reach because they are beyond his control. Jiang Li was speechless when he heard what the man imparted, and he looked indifferent. He activated his storage ring, and when the man saw it, he remarked that such a portable storage space was not something a normal person has. Jiang Li showed a token of the Dao sect and introduced that his name is Jiang Li, and the man, who was so surprised when he saw the token, exclaimed that if one met someone with that token, it was like meeting with the sect master himself, and he wondered if Jiang Li was really from the Dao sect because he had never heard of the name Jiang Li before. The man started calling Jiang Li Senior, and he promised that if he wished to help in the matter, he would explain everything quietly, and after the two of them walked away from the crowd, the man suggested that they should chat over there. The man disclosed that his name is Yuan Wuxing, and he is just a cultivator passing through, but seeing how desperate those people were, he felt like he had to do something, and what he found out shocked him. Yuan Wuxing reported that in his search for the missing children, he found out that all their trails lead to Qing City, and it wasn't a recent occurrence as such disappearances have been happening for 2 centuries in both Qing City and the surrounding areas, coinciding with every Jiang family ancestral worship. Jiang Li turned serious as Yuan Wuxing revealed that all the missing children are babies less than 1 year old. Jiang Li seemed to have an idea why they were taking those babies, and as he was about to confirm it with Yuan Wuxing quickly denied it and asserted that there was no solid proof of that, so he wouldn't dare say that. Jiang Li observed that the city lord is turning a blind eye to the issue, so it means something. Yuan Wuxing concluded that no one knows because the Jiang family has the backing of the emperor, so there was no way the city lord of Qing City would dare to take action, let alone Qing City, because even across the entire dynasty, he was afraid that not many would dare touch the Jiang family. Jiang Li remarked that, however, it was the Great Zhou dynasty. He knew that among the 9 dynasties, the Great Zhou dynasty has something special because only the Great Zhou has successfully managed the nation's destiny and governance in tandem. Jiang Li remarked that if the monarch ignores lawbreakers without doling out punishment, the nation's fate suffers, and in severe cases, it could lead to the monarch's downfall. Yuan Wuxing shook his head, and he observed that with a nation governed by laws, Jiang Li's words might hold sway anywhere in Great Zhou, but not when it comes to the Jiang family. He mentioned that it was reported that Emperor Jiang is selfless, but no one could guarantee that he would feel like that when it comes to his own family. So if the Jiang family dares to do such a thing, he inquired if it meant that the emperor was okay with it. Jiang Li mentioned that, as far as he knew, Emperor Jiang left the family 500 years ago, and he never returned to the Jiang family. Therefore, no matter how they looked at it, Emperor Jiang lost contact with them. But Yuan Wuxing suggested that maybe it was to create Emperor Jiang's selfless image and that blood is thicker than water, so he questioned if he wouldn't have secretly returned once, which rendered Jiang Li speechless. Jiang Li shifted the discussion, and he questioned Yuan Wuxing about what he claimed, that there was no proof, and Yuan Wuxing argued that to have any solid proof, he would need to find them, dead or alive, but there have been no clues so far. Yuan Wuxing proposed that if the children were dead, there would be a lot of resentment, but he felt none. Jiang Li listened intently as Yuan Wuxing proposed that there are so many children missing and it is hard to cover it up, so he pondered if he had made a mistake. but Jiang Li confirmed that Yuan Wuxing is correct and that there is no proof. Looking at his statue, Jiang Li declared that it is bad to wrongly accuse innocent people. A few moments later, the sun was shining brightly up in the sky. Jiang Li was floating in the sky along with the clouds. He was observing King City from above. Jiang Li planned that he would extend his perception across that region for hundreds of miles to see what happened there. A huge magic circle, which covered the entire city and the areas around it, appeared, and Jiang Li was at the center of it. Jiang Li observed that there was nothing unusual. A few hours have passed, and the sun is already setting. Suddenly, Jiang Li's magic circle detected something. Jiang Li was amused when he perceived that it was a space distortion, as he expected that he would find nothing that day. He saw that it was in the Jiang family's residence's backyard, and he discovered that there was actually a spatial node hidden there. There was a warp in space, and Jiang Li realized that unless one is traversing through space, that node remains invisible from the outside, so it was no wonder that he did not discover anything unusual that afternoon. As the old man emerged from the node, Jiang Li recognized that he was the old man who was at the ancestral hall that afternoon. The old man has fully come out of the node. He slowly walked towards the building, and the node behind him started to disappear. Jiang Li quickly went down to where the node had just disappeared. He extended his hand and found the node where the old man came out. The array on the node was activated. It began to open, and a dark aura was wafting out of the door. Jiang Li stood in front of that door, and complete darkness was in front of him. Just ahead, there was a path leading to an array that was surrounded with skeletal remains, and in its center, there were dead babies who were bleeding out of their eyes, nose, and mouth. Seeing that, Jiang Li stated that cultivating in demonic Tao and sacrificing others for personal gain is an absolute taboo in the cultivation world, and the old man actually decided on the bloody Tao of sacrificing babies. Jiang Li remarked that those babies were all dead, and he thought he could save at least a few in time. He looked enraged, and he declared that for not returning even once in 500 years, that responsibility falls on him. At the Jiang family's residence, a man asked the old man what was wrong, why he was already out when he stated that he was going into secluded cultivation to break through the peak of the nascent soul stage, and if he had already accomplished the change towards immortality. The old man replied that achieving immortality is not as easy as pie and that he still can't reach it, so he has to bring him more babies. The man noted that there has been a commotion in King City over the missing children, and there were also some cultivators that were helping with the investigation, and they are getting suspicious of them. The old man just scoffed and declared that the man should capture those fools, use them as sacrifices, and let them reunite with their children. Suddenly, Jiang Li remarked that it was touching, and as he asked the old man why wouldn't he also go and reunite with his parents, he asserted that he shouldn't just stand there yapping. The old man was surprised, and as he asked Jiang Li who he was, he commented that Jiang Li totally evaded his perception. Jiang Li didn't answer, and he swung his arm instead. The old man's eyes were wide in surprise when he saw Jiang Li's punch coming at him. There was a powerful explosion caused by the impact, and the area was filled with flying dust and broken bricks. The system suddenly congratulated Jiang Li for defeating Jiang Yixing, and it informed him that the novice mission was completed. As the dust began to settle, it revealed the Jiang family's residence, which had been destroyed. While the old man, who seemed to be Jiang Yixing, was lying on the ground with blood on his face, the man from earlier observed that it was such terrifying strength, as Jiang Li didn't even use any skills. It was a simple punch, but it defeated a nascent soul stage ancestor. The people outside saw what happened, and they inquired what happened at the Jiang family's residence, while Yuan Wuxing suggested that he thought it was merely an earthquake. Jiang Yixing questioned Jiang Li if he knew who he was, and he answered that he was the older cousin of Emperor Jiang. When Jiang Li heard Jiang Yixing mention that he was Emperor Jiang's cousin, he questioned if he wasn't supposed to be deceased. Jiang Yixing was alarmed when he saw that something emerged from the smoke and was coming at him at incredible speed. It was plastered on his face, and Jiang Li inquired Jiang Yixing if that memorial tablet wasn't in his honor and who was speaking to him at the moment. Jiang Li acted like he just realized something and acknowledged that he finally got it. He accused that Jiang Yixing was the one who managed to survive up to that point by sacrificing babies and practicing the demon Tao, reaching the peak of the nascent soul stage. It was him, Jiang Yixing. He started walking forward, and Jiang Yixing, who was moving away, challenged him if he would still dare touch him when he knew that he was Emperor Jiang's cousin, and he revealed that there were hundreds of people around there. Jiang Li disclosed that the city lord of King City is protecting Jiang Yixing, and the surrounding city lords are also turning a blind eye to what he was doing. Even the higher officials remained silent, because he was taking advantage of his status as a member of the Jiang imperial family to act as he wishes. Jiang Yixing was agitated as Jiang Li proclaimed that even if someone discovers that he cultivated the demonic Tao, it doesn't matter because, naturally, as relatives, Emperor Jiang wouldn't want to witness his cousin succumbing to old age. Thus, he remains untouchable. Jiang Li mentioned that he just wondered if the Great Zhou Empire's monarch, Jai would dare touch Emperor Jiang's people. A silhouette suddenly appeared behind Jiang Li, and he remarked that the person should come out because he called him over, not for him to stand there and just watch from the side. The man inquired if Jiang Li's move earlier wasn't really too much, as half of the city lord's residence next door collapsed, and Jiang Li asserted that he just destroyed the place where Jiang Yixing was hiding his dirty secrets to reveal them to the public, as this would save the man the hassle of digging up evidence. The people saw the skeletal remains, and one of them questioned why there were so many skeletons hidden in the Jiang family's residence. Another commented that they were all babies' skeletons, and another probed if those could be the babies whose parents were protesting at the city lord's place. The man, Jai, declared that it was a disgrace for him, being the monarch of Shu, to have such grave matters unfolding in their place of law, yet he didn't even notice it, so he had to do something immediately. Jiang Li removed his hat and confessed that he hasn't interfered in family matters for 500 years, but that didn't stop his family from harming the common people, and that is his fault as well. Jiang Li acknowledged that, after all, his name is being used to commit those crimes. Jiang Yixing was horrified when he realized that it was Jai and Jiang Li. The people around quickly bowed while thinking that it was actually Jai and Jiang Li. On the other hand, Yuan Wuxing looked puzzled when he found out that he was talking to Jiang Li, and he wondered about his Dao sect token. Meanwhile, Jiang Yixing denied that he didn't kill those babies, and he urged that Jai should see that none of the babies' resentment is on him. Jiang Li considered that it was a valid argument, which is why he specifically brought Jai there. Yuan Wuxing quickly realized Jiang Li's plan, and it was the Tao of Time cultivated by the Great Shu imperial family. The imperial family of Great Shu meticulously studied the Tao of Time so they could trace the river of time and reveal everything. Moreover, Jai is renowned for his unwavering adherence to laws and regulations. Jai resolved that he would enter the river of time and look through Jiang Yixing's actions clearly. Jiang Yixing looked terrified when Jai stated that, according to the laws of the Great Shu, he would be executed. Jai started creating a magic circle in front of him. While Jai was starting to disappear, Yuan Wuxing was slowly walking away from the scene. And when Jai had completely disappeared, so had Yuan Wuxing. Jai seemed to have been transported to a different place. He was transported into a place that was filled with golden rivers that intertwined with each other. Jai extended his hand and began gathering gold dust. The gold dust he accumulated started to form like a droplet in front of his hand. Jai's eyes seemed to be peeking through the droplet. Through it, Jai could see Jiang Yixing's evil smile while he was sacrificing a baby. Jai emerged back into the present, and he announced that those who cultivate the demonic Tao will be punished. Jiang Yixing looked horrified when Jai proclaimed that he would take him to the heavenly prison and that a day would be set for his physical and spiritual punishment, and all other city lords and officials found guilty of neglecting their duties would be apprehended. Jiang Li stated that he would ask Jiang Yixing one more thing, and he inquired where he found the method of sacrificing babies. He also questioned how he knew that the power of faith dispelled the baby's resentment, and Jiang Yixing was horrified yet again. Suddenly, Jiang Yixing scoffed and declared that Jiang Li is indeed majestic and powerful, so being at the Great Ascension stage must be splendid, unlike him, with average talent. No heavenly spiritual root, and no immeasurable Tao physique. Jiang Yixing asserted that there was no need for all of that as he was meant to die at the foundation stage, but Jiang Li interrupted him and insisted that he shouldn't try to act dumb. Jiang Li mentioned that when he first began his journey, his heavenly spiritual root was concealed and the immeasurable Tao physique was inaccessible. He explained that to the outside world, it appeared that he had the most unfortunate 5 elements punishing physique, and Jiang Yixing was distressed when Jiang Li questioned how else he could have been subjected to his bullying. Jiang Li revealed that on his journey to reaching the Great Ascension stage, the number of life and death situations she encountered was beyond count. He observed that he didn't even bully the weak, but Jiang Yixing did the opposite and murdered babies, which was so inhumane. Jiang Yixing suddenly looked guilty, and he admitted that everything started with a man in black 380 years ago. He recounted that he was approaching the end of his life at that time as he was struggling at the mid-level of the foundation stage. He was just waiting for his death, but the man in black came to him, and he elevated him from the foundation stage to the golden core stage by pointing a finger casually. Jiang Yixing recounted that the man in black also disclosed how to sacrifice babies, and having been snatched back from death's jaws, his craving for life intensified beyond measure, so he was interested in the method of that sacrifice, but he was worried the baby's resentment would reveal his secret. He remembered that the man in black saw his hesitation and assured that the power of faith could get rid of the resentment. Jiang Yixing reminisced that the man in black disappeared, and he never saw him again. Upon hearing what Jiang Yixing recounted, Jiang Li remarked that if he hadn't reached the Great Ascension stage and needed the power of faith, once Jiang Yixing's heinous acts were exposed, they would have inevitably tarnished him. Jiang Li speculated whether it was merely a dissemination of the demonic Tao's teachings or if there was a deliberate plot against him. But Jiang Li surmised that 380 years ago, he was merely a contender for the throne, so he began to speculate if the man in black could have orchestrated plans against all potential heirs to the emperorship. Jiang Li pondered that he was hoping for a simple system mission, but it was something else entirely. They were still in King City. Jiang Li mentioned a man in black 380 years ago, and Jai responded that he could not trace back that far. Jiang Li remarked that everything about him was commendable because as emperor, he was diligent and loving to his people and just and respectful of the law. As a friend, he valued relationships and loyalty, but he added that he should just say what he wanted to say. But Jiang Li pointed out that as a cultivator, he refused to practice, so he was wasting his dual pupil's talent. He inquired if just tracing back 80 years could burn through all his lifespan, and he concluded that it was his turn to try. Jiang Li explained that he would love to, but sadly, the path of time was purely about enlightenment, and he had tried, but he couldn't learn it. The dual pupil was a symbol only possessed by the founding emperor, Emperor Xuan, and it was the key to mastering the path of time. Jai agreed that it was right, and legend stated that Emperor Xuan was originally a fish in the river of time who, by some fortuitous chance, leaped out of the river of time. He transformed into a human and laid the foundations of Great Zhu within the 9 provinces. Hence, descendants of the Great Zhu naturally resonated with the path of time. Jiang Li emphasized that he was his old comrade and he really needed to put effort into his cultivation. But he indicated that if there was nothing else, he would be going and he shouldn't bother seeing him off. Meanwhile, the mortal fairy lay on a couch, surrounded by darkness. A single light was in the room, and it was pointed at her. The Wei Emperor admired that she was so beautiful, to which the Mengjiang Emperor concurred and noted that it was hard to believe that such beauty existed in that world. And she was so beautiful that he wished she was his. On the other hand, Jiang Li flew up in the sky. He summoned the system. The system congratulated him on his tough cultivation and fierce battles, culminating in Jiang Yixing's defeat. It offered if he would like to claim his reward. He accepted the reward while wondering what tough cultivation and fierce battles it was talking about. He received the reward. He evaluated that the power wasn't even as much as what he got from a single breath. He recalled that it was meant for those in the Kai cultivation stage, so he concluded it was fine. But if he possessed that power back when he established his foundation, he would have reached the perfection realm, a privilege only core disciples of major sects had. He admitted that it was nice, but he would pass while suspecting that it must be kidding him, and he considered who would want to cultivate power with unknown origins. He decided he should see the other rewards, which were the Dragon Tiger Arhat Force, a body cultivation technique, and a mid-grade spirit sword. He placed them into his storage ring. He acquired a useless beginner's gift pack number 1 and a useless item from the system labeled Loneliness Counterattack number 2. Suddenly, the system notified that there was a new mission. It explained that after joining the Huiyan sect, the grandson of the sect's grand elder, Yunbo, believed his 5 elements spirit root lowered the sect's average level and made things difficult for him, so it requested that he defeat him with overwhelming power. The mission could be declined. The mission rewards were a chance for enlightenment, a mysterious piece of a map, and a high-grade spiritual weapon of any design, which was upgradable. Jiang Li found that the mysterious piece of a map was interesting, so he decided that he should accept the mission. The system notified that a new feature, store, was unlocked. He noted that there was finally something interesting, and he opened the store. He was shown multiple lists of items. He questioned why all those items were from that world and hoped for something like a mobile phone, computer, nuclear bomb, or satellite from his previous life, or perhaps something unique from the immortal realm. He didn't really care about the phone, but he merely wished to see what it felt like to resist a nuclear bomb with his body. He inquired if there were any items from other worlds. The system advised that he visit the other worlds first. He concluded that it was another useless feature because if he could go to the other worlds, there was no reason why he would need that system. He instructed that the system should organize needed source points from highest to lowest. The system merged the lists into a long one. It organized the list as instructed. Jiang Li questioned if the Yin-Yang Heaven Seal wasn't the Daoist sect's treasure, and how Elder Bai's stuff ended up there. He speculated if it could be that those items didn't appear out of nowhere but were stolen from the sects. He commanded that the system should close the store and decided that he should set that aside and focus on the mission. He resolved that he should use a distant communication talisman to contact the Imperial Palace first because he came straight there after his tribulation, and he assumed they were looking for him. He instructed the talisman to call Imperial Palace leader Zhang Konghu. Zhang Konghu instantly informed that he was just about to contact him, as there was big trouble. Jiang Li inquired what happened to his face. He recalled that Zhang Konghu was the one known for his strength to stand against tribulation passers with mere physique, and there weren't many in the 9 provinces who could injure him. He wondered if he and his wife had another argument, and Zhang Konghu denied it. He guessed if it was a demon invasion, and Zhang Konghu rejected that as well. He admitted that he should quit the guessing game because he always ended up at the bottom of the barrel in lotteries. As he assumed that he was right that he didn't need to spell out what kind of luck he had, Jiang Li urged that he should go on and spill the beans. Zhang Konghu revealed that there was a fight brewing and a beauty was involved. Jiang Li inquired how they could cause a huge problem. Jiang Kong, who responded that the thing was, the emperor of the Mengjiang dynasty took a concubine a few years back, and she was kept hidden in a golden house, unseen by outsiders, and he himself abandoned state affairs just to stay in the golden house. Jiang Li considered that some emperors neglected their duties for beauty, others for cultivation, shutting themselves away for decades, and they were all common occurrences and not within the jurisdiction of the imperial palace. If an emperor neglected or slacked off in his responsibilities, the imperial palace might intervene. But that would be overreaching, and they might as well just unify the 9 provinces directly. Jiang Kong, who explained that it was rumored that the Mengjiang emperor didn't even consort with the concubine. He merely watched her. The Wei emperor of the Great Wei dynasty was close to him, and after ending his seclusion, he went to the golden house to see for himself, and that was when trouble started. Jiang Li recalled that the Wei emperor also had a taste for beauties. When he inquired if he wanted the Mengjiang emperor's concubine but was refused, Jiang Kong, who confirmed that he was exact. The Wei emperor offered spirit stones, cultivation techniques, and land at his discretion, but the Mengjiang emperor still refused, and they started arguing, even resorting to physical conflict, destroying half of the imperial palace. Jiang Li questioned if it was what he meant by a fight brewing involving a beauty, and remarked that he really got a knack for condensing sentences. He mused whether he should pay for private tutoring for him. He concluded that 2 dynasties going to war was indeed significant, and an emperor leading the charge meant millions of troops, perhaps even more. When it came to the 9 provinces, they were talking about an army consisting of millions of Kai condensing, foundation building, and golden core cultivators, not to mention those beyond the nascent soul stage. It was nothing like the ancient mortal armies of his previous life. He calculated that the true Kai of a 6th-stage Kai condensing cultivator could rival bullets, and a golden core's burst could match a tomahawk missile, like something out of World War II. The battlefield could affect other dynasties and sects, triggering a 9-province-wide war. He declared that he would head over, he would try to mediate, and if that failed, he would have to enforce peace. He judged that facing a million-strong army wasn't much of an issue, but gauging his strength, that was the real deal. He inquired how he got those injuries and who hit him, and Jiang Kong, who revealed that that was the real trouble. He rushed to mediate upon hearing of the emperor's duel because, after all, maintaining the 9 provinces' stability was their duty at the imperial palace. But upon seeing that concubine, he was completely bewitched. She was so stunningly beautiful, like a celestial being. But he corrected himself and clarified that even fairies couldn't compare to her beauty. He remembered that he claimed she was too beautiful. He must have her, and she was his, so nobody could take her from him. He confessed that he almost lost control and took her then and there. He was barely keeping himself in check. In desperation, he had no choice but to beat himself up, to snap back to reality through pain. Jiang Li realized that it was no small matter. Those 2 emperors were nothing special, and compared to Emperor Zhu, they were lacking. So fighting over a concubine without concern for their dynasties wasn't surprising. But Jiang Kong, who was different because to be the leader of the imperial palace, one must possess not only cultivation skills, but impeccable character as well. For a concubine to captivate someone like him to the point of losing self-control, there was definitely something off. He inquired how many days until the duel. When Jiang Kong, who answered that they decided to meet and fight to the death in 2 days, he confirmed that he would head there immediately. But it was a half a day's journey, so he should keep an eye on those 2 emperors, to which he acknowledged that he got it. It was already evening when Jiang Li arrived at the Mengjiang dynasty. He assumed that they were fighting again, but he questioned why there were 3 figures. Jiang Kong, who remarked that only the strong deserve beauties. The Wei emperor insulted him and told him to back off, while the Mengjiang emperor insisted that it was the Mengjiang dynasty, so all must listen to him there. Suddenly, Jiang Li reminded that he told him to keep an eye on those 2 emperors and inquired if he got bewitched by the concubine again. He instructed that everyone should chill. He ordered them to be quiet. He commanded them to stay down. The 3 of them crashed on the ground. They crashed so hard that they created dents in the ground. Jiang Kong, who admitted that he finally came to his senses. But Jiang Li struck pretty hard, and he almost shattered his bones. Jiang Li acknowledged that thankfully he was still rational, and he chose to take the fight to the sky to avoid harming others. If he dared to fight on the capital's grounds, he would have sent him straight to the underworld with a slap. Jiang Kong, who laughed while the other 2 emperors quickly paid respects to Jiang Li. Jiang Li inquired if he might see the extraordinary lady, and the Mengjiang emperor led the way. He was brought to the pedestal where the beauty was. The Mengjiang emperor explained that she often slept. He brought her to the golden house 3 years ago, and she had been asleep since then. She rarely woke up, and even loud noises outside didn't disturb her. The beauty slept peacefully. The bright light reflected on her pale skin, and she looked like she was glowing. Jiang Li recognized her. He recalled that he had seen her before, or rather, seen a portrait. It was drawn with ordinary paper and ink, yet classified as prohibited because it depicted that woman, a woman who was supposed to be dead. Jiang Li considered that the beauty looked just like the portrait he saw. He pondered whether she was the real deal or just someone who resembled her. The Mengjiang emperor declared that it was enough and there would be no more staring because that beauty belonged to him. Jiang Li proposed that they should step outside and cool off while he coughed and urged that he should let go of his collar because he couldn't breathe. Outside, the Mengjiang emperor inquired whether he didn't feel anything when he saw the beauty. He affirmed that she was very beautiful. The Wei emperor demanded whether that was all, and he affirmed that she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Zhang Konghu questioned if there was more. As he confirmed that it was all, the Mengjiang emperor probed whether he didn't feel the urge to make her his, to admire her beauty up close, and he declined. The three of them remarked that his temperament was truly extraordinary. He queried where he found the woman. The Mengjiang emperor explained that it was during the western hunt. He ventured alone into the depths of the forest and discovered that celestial beauty sleeping beneath an ancient tree. Feeling that such a mortal body like his was unworthy of touching the beautiful lady, he utilized spatial manipulation to bring her back to the palace and build a golden house for her. Jiang Li reflected on it. He stated that the woman was of great significance, so he needed to visit the mortal paradise to confirm some matters. He expressed hope that both of the monarchs would stay true to their hearts and wouldn't indulge in worldly desires, while Zhang Konghu should guard the gate until he returned and let no one enter, to which he consented. Jiang Li reasoned that just in case, they should set up a large formation to guard that place. He summoned a jade piece. He used it to create a formation. The formation instantly materialized and enclosed the golden house. Zhang Konghu queried when he learned how to set up formations and whether he hadn't completely given up on cultivating the 100 immortal arts. He evaluated that his cultivation and combat prowess were formidable, but he was completely clueless when it came to formations, pill refining, and artifact refining, and no matter how much he attempted to learn, it was hopeless. He recollected the time when a master remarked that Jiang Li's talent in formation was kind of lacking, and he concluded that he should forget it as he was not learning anymore. Jiang Li disclosed that it was from Elder Bai's stash, and Zhang Konghu wondered what a stash was. Jiang Li cleared his throat and credited the jade piece bestowed upon him by the Tao sect's master. In the 9 provinces, there were 2 major sects, the compassionate Buddhists and the all-female mortal paradise. The Buddhists were renowned for their world-benefiting merits, a widely acknowledged truth, while the mortal paradise remained reclusive, rarely venturing out, and people only heard about them, never having seen them. Hence, there were many legends surrounding it, and one of them described the founder of the mortal paradise as the most beautiful woman in history, capable of captivating even Buddha himself. Jiang Li arrived at the lake where the mortal paradise was. He conveyed that he was presumptuously visiting them, so he hoped they would forgive him. A formation emerged and swirled inside the rocks. It grew bigger as it advanced toward him. It revealed a completely different area behind the rocks. Taoist nun Qing Yudao and Saintess Jing appeared. Jing remarked that he was still as magnificent and carefree as ever, which she aspired to be. He greeted her politely. Qing Yudao acknowledged that since he also admitted it was presumptuous to visit, she wouldn't entertain him. Jing countered that he came to visit, so they couldn't be unreasonable. Jiang Li mentioned that after years apart, Jing was still so gentle, much better than a certain troublemaking nun. Qing Yudao conceded that she should bear with it, as she couldn't defeat him. Jiang Li whispered. As he observed that Jing's cultivation and reputation eclipsed even her master's, he queried why she hadn't become the sect leader. Jing replied that it was because the title of Saintess Jing wasn't very appealing. Jiang Li recollected that Qing Yudao, the current leader of the mortal paradise, once admired a monk from Mount Meru. But that monk's heart was impure, so he had to slay him, and since then, she harbored resentment toward him. He pointed out that she picked the wrong guy and queried why she blamed him. Jing recounted that back in the day, when the immortal tree was on the brink of death, it was thanks to him that it was saved. Qing Yudao warned that if she brought that up, she would get even angrier. Back then, she offered a bounty to save the immortal tree, and anyone capable of achieving that task could select an item of their choice from their sect's treasure trove. And since he fulfilled the task, she had to keep her promise. But he actually chose to take their treasure trove's key. As a result, disciples from the mortal paradise were forced to leave the mountain to earn money. He claimed that he heard it led to many touching love stories and wondered whether she shouldn't be thanking him for that. Besides, he already returned the key to her, but she noted that he returned it after 10 years. Jing speculated that if it weren't for her taunts toward Jiang Li at that time, he wouldn't have intentionally taken the key to the treasure trove. Back then, she scoffed and declared that he shouldn't think that saving the immortal tree meant she owed him anything. Jiang Li stated that speaking of their treasure trove, he once saw a portrait there, and it was a portrait that only existed in the mortal paradise. The person in the portrait had a face that stunned him, so it left a deep impression on him. Jing identified the person in that portrait as their founder, the mortal fairy. Before the ladder to immortality was severed, an immortal descended to the mortal realm. The fairy was as beautiful as a holy saintess, every expression exuding charm. And regardless of gender, even those in the transcending tribulation stage couldn't resist her allure. It was said that many titans in the immortal realm were moved by her beauty and fought for her. So unable to bear it, she fled to the 9 provinces and never returned to the immortal realm. Wherever she went, disputes followed, and she had to use her immortal powers to quell them. The Dao sect's living fossil personally went to see her and praised her, saying that she was the epitome of beauty in the heavenly Dao. In the eyes of the heavenly Dao, both immortals and mortals were mere straws, so there was no way they could resist the charm of it. And afterward, the fairy established the mortal paradise in the west and proclaimed herself the mortal fairy. Jiang Li declared that he believed he had seen their founder and she might have resurrected. The passage to the mortal paradise remained open. Jiang Li remarked that he suspected the person he saw in the Mengjiang dynasty was their esteemed sect's founder, but he also acknowledged that their sect's founder passed away long ago. Qing Yudao noted that in the 9 provinces, the concept of reincarnation is known, but the idea of the dead returning to life is unheard of. Jing pointed out that their founder was no ordinary being, to which she agreed. Jiang Li explained that he was just an outsider there and it was not his place to gaze upon their founder's remains, so he requested if the 2 of them could check her tomb to see if her immortal body remained. Jing reminded that from the moment he revived the immortal tree, he became a benefactor for their mortal paradise, and a benefactor was hardly an outsider. She led the way, and he complied. A few moments later, Jing revealed that to prevent her immortal body from being taken away, the founder left a seal on the outside of the crystal. Only she could break the seal, so that must have meant that the founder resurrected and left on her own. Jiang Li confirmed that indeed, it was their founder inside the golden house, and he wondered if the dead could really come back to life. Jing confessed that she was uncertain about their founder's current state, and if she had fully regained her memories or was acting on instinct. Qing Yudao urged that she and Jiang Li should hurry up to the Mengjiang Emperor's place to check on her, and she accepted. A few moments later, Jing reached the Golden House. She affirmed that it truly was the Mortal Paradise founder. Jiang Konghu inquired how come Jing didn't get enchanted by the beauty just like Jiang Li did, and how they could stare directly at her without getting bewitched. Jing conveyed that she could feel a blood connection with the founder. Jiang Li speculated that it must be why she could resist the mortal fairy's allure, while Jiang Konghu wondered if she was a descendant of the fairy. Jing clarified that the mortal paradise was known for its timeless beauties mainly due to 2 factors. One involved masters descending the mountain and choosing women they fancied as disciples. The other involved a peach tree in the mortal paradise whose peaches allowed women to conceive, and the newborns naturally became disciples of mortal paradise. The mortal fairy herself consumed such a peach, and naturally she was of the latter kind. The founder's beauty was truly incomparable to them, the mortals. She reflected that compared to the unique beauty of the mortal fairy, she was merely a beauty that came once every 5,000 years at best. A few moments later, Jiang Li met with the other emperors. Jiang Li asserted that the mortal fairy was of great importance, so keeping her could only bring chaos. As the founder of mortal paradise, it was only right to return her to them, and he questioned what he would say. The Mengjiang Emperor refused because the mortal fairy had been sleeping there for 3 years, and she was accustomed to that place, so he couldn't take her away. Jiang Li acknowledged that he knew his rules. When in doubt, fists spoke loudest. The strong prevailed, the weak suffered, so he challenged him and warned he would have a few rounds with him. The Mengjiang Emperor pleaded that he forgive his offense, while the Wei Emperor volunteered that he should count him in. The Mengjiang Emperor believed that it didn't matter if Jiang Li was an emperor because they were all emperors there and doubted if his status made him superior, and if he assumed he could take her away just like that, while the Wei Emperor maintained that even if the imperial palace was revered throughout the 9 provinces, their 2 dynasties would not bow at that time. The fight ensued while a tiny bird slept peacefully on the tree branch. It got startled and flew away when the 2 emperors screamed. The Mengjiang Emperor urged that they should quickly summon the imperial physician and save him. On the other hand, Du Ziner was at Saya town. She meditated near a pond. She wondered what had been going on those past few years and lamented that her spiritual power didn't increase at all. It was like her body was a leaking bucket, and whatever spiritual energy entered, leaked out just as fast. She questioned if she was right that Jing duties in the sect must be keeping her busy, and if she still remembered her golden core stage junior sister, and she expressed that she really wanted to learn more about cultivation from her. Suddenly, another disciple called her and commented that she kept talking about Jing when they all dared not approach her. Although she was not a strict person, she seemed so aloof, but Du Zinner insisted that she was not at all. She remembered the time when she called Jing Zin and stated that she had a question about cultivation. Jing Zin queried what she didn't understand. She was mesmerized by her beauty. Jing Zin assured that if she had questions in the future, she should feel free to ask her, to which she agreed and expressed gratitude for it. She stated that Jing Zin was actually incredibly kind. Meanwhile, Jing Zin returned to their founder's tomb. She apologized to Qing Yudao and instructed that they must ask her to leave. She and Jiang Li quickly grabbed Qing Yudao, who was too stunned to react. She was thrown out the door. She was about to protest to the two of them, but she convinced herself to forget it. She pondered who she was to argue when she was not a descendant of the mortal fairy and reflected that she was merely brought to the mountain by the previous sect leader at 28, so she possessed no resistance to the founder's allure. She recalled how she claimed that the founder was hers and nobody could take her from her. She cursed in her mind, and she wondered why Jiang Li was unaffected while she, the sect leader, was there, feeling like an outsider. Inside, they placed the founder back into her resting place. Her eyes slowly opened. Jiang Li presumed that she was about to awaken.
Jiang Li and Jing Xin stood before the founder, lying quietly on her resting bed, wrapped in the glow of crystals that shimmered like slow-moving stars. She stirred, the faintest movement breaking the still air, and then she rose. She moved toward them with a calm grace, and Jing Xin introduced herself as the 36th generation descendant, bowing low in reverence, while Jiang Li introduced himself as the 72nd generation emperor, greeting her with the title of Mortal Fairy. The founder blinked slowly and asked Jing Xin if she was truly her descendant, who she was exactly, and what an emperor even meant. Jing Xin, trying to draw her memory out, asked if any old faces or stories surfaced in her mind. The founder replied that he only remembered awakening among the crystals and feeling something outside pulling tight around her like invisible chains. Once she broke loose, she said she wandered down the mountain, drifted east, past 2 riverside towns, and stepped into a forest where every step made her drowsier until she curled up under a huge tree and fell asleep. When she next opened her eyes, she was inside a golden house with a man staring at her like a fool. No matter what she asked, he just grinned stupidly, and bored by his silence, she went back to sleep. That loop played again and again until Jiang Li appeared before her. He pressed if she could recall anything from the immortal realm or her fall to the mortal world. She shook her head gently. He figured that maybe the mortal fairy was dealing with memory loss after resurrection, or she just didn't carry memories from her past life. He mulled it over in silence. He lifted his hand, conjuring a glowing map across his palm. He mentioned that this was where the fairy first woke and asked if she indeed crossed those 2 riverside towns, and she confirmed. He sank into thought, his face still while Jing Xin caught the flicker of concern behind it. Then the founder murmured that she was getting sleepy again, and Jing Xin, with quiet respect, urged her to rest. The pair stepped out of the resting chamber and sealed the great door shut behind them. Jing Xin turned and asked Jiang Li if he noticed anything strange. He replied that ever since he took the treasure trove's key, none of them could even afford spiritual grains and had to descend the mountain just to earn spiritual stones, though he later returned the key for her sake. Still, he mentioned that they'd learned their lesson, and as he asked if he was right that they had purchased people from the Mengjiang dynasty and settled them there, she confirmed that they did bring mortals over. He reasoned that across the 9 provinces, everyone had the spark to cultivate, so when they spoke of mortals, they meant those stuck forever in the early stages of qi cultivation. Jing Xin explained that those mortals built towns. Beyond the upper river and lower river towns he marked for the founder, there were 6 more. They grew spiritual grains and delivered them yearly as tribute. Jiang Li remarked that the problem sat right there. The mortal fairy walked through both towns in broad daylight, yet somehow no one noticed her beauty. He added that no such reports ever reached them, meaning the founder had been missing for 3 years with no one realizing. Jing Xin agreed and reasoned that the tomb's location was remote enough that no one could have seen her leave the mountain. But for her to pass through 2 lively towns unnoticed in full daylight was simply wrong. She said it was even stranger since each town had a golden core stage junior sister guarding it, and both towns produced the highest quality spiritual grains. So she asked how anything could have gone wrong. Jiang Li responded that instead of facing a problem, they chose to pretend it didn't exist. And to his disbelief, denial became their solution. He took off into the sky without another word. Jing Xin's patience snapped into quiet frustration. She summoned a book with a bitter flick. She grumbled that so much for the claim that men liked slightly naive women. That's what nonsense. That book was a joke. It was pathetic, considering her master swore the book was brilliant, and even bragged it was a bestseller across the 9 provinces. But it turned out to be pure fraud. The title gleamed in gold, 100 Ways to Make a Man Take the Initiative, authored by Master of Desires. Qing Yudao drifted closer to the book, half amused, half resigned. She admitted to herself that she should have known better, especially since she had written the thing. Moments later, Jiang Li and Jing arrived in one of the towns. Jiang Li observed that it was no wonder the mortal fairy, who could stir the hearts of gods, left no impression here. Jing realized the place felt empty, not a breath of life among innkeepers, traders, or anyone else. Every single one of them was dead. Jiang Li concluded grimly that Upper River Town was a city of the dead, and he wondered aloud how corpses could ever feel awe for beauty. Jiang Li and Jing walked into a quiet inn smelling faintly of damp wood and tea leaves. The waiter greeted them with an easy grin, mentioning that the two looked new around there, since it wasn't often outsiders wandered in, then turned to Jing and teased if he might be a fairy from the mortal paradise. Jiang Li pulled out a spirit stone, saying he had a question for him and that it was worth his time. But the waiter refused with a polite wave, insisting that wouldn't do at all because the two of them had to be honored guests from the mortal paradise, so there was no way he could ever take their payment. Jing studied him, noticing how he moved with smooth, unforced grace, not a trace of stiffness, indistinguishable from a living person to the naked eye. She figured she'd better use her spiritual sense just to be sure. Inside his Dantian and mind space, she sensed one goo worm each, one steering his body, the other guiding his thoughts. A precise, terrifyingly refined technique of corpse control. It was the Gu tribe's own secret art, the kind only their elders ever mastered. Jiang Li then asked the waiter whether a stunningly beautiful fairy had passed through that area in recent years. The waiter perked up, saying there was no need to elaborate. Yes, that was 2 years ago, then corrected himself, saying it had actually been 3, when a fairy so breathtaking she looked painted into the world passed by. Everyone dropped their meals to chase a glimpse, but she never looked their way, and the few who trailed after her got stopped cold by Fairy Yuan. Jiang Li inquired about Fairy Yuan, and Jing explained that it must be Fairy Yuan Ling who guarded that region. She belonged to the Gu tribe. Jiang Li pressed, wanting to know how Yuan Ling reacted to the woman's beauty, if she looked enchanted or tried anything foolish, and the waiter grew nervous, begging him not to speak carelessly because she would never act improperly. He added that her face stayed calm, and she merely remarked on the woman's beauty before walking off. Jing figured that since Yuan Ling came from the Gu tribe, she definitely wasn't descended from the Mortal Paradise founder, so she couldn't tell why the charm hadn't affected her either. Jiang Li suddenly turned the mood strange by asking the waiter if he realized he was dead. The waiter blinked, confused, asking what he meant by that. Jiang Li chuckled lightly, saying he was only joking and that the waiter should just get back to work, which the waiter promised he'd do right away. Jing then questioned why Yuan Ling had remained untouched by the founder's allure, pointing out she should only be at the golden core stage. But from the level of refinement in those goo worms, the puppets behaved completely alive, oblivious to their own death, a feat no golden core cultivator could pull off. Jiang Li noted that maintaining corpses so lifelike took incredible skill, the kind only someone at the divine transformation stage would recognize. Still, he reminded her that the Gu tribe wasn't the only group dealing in goo worms, since he'd roamed the lands for years and run into all kinds of strange arts. He lamented that the Gu tribe had fallen into decline and withdrawn from the world, leaving his knowledge of them incomplete. He asked Jing how long it had been since her last visit, and remarked that if there were even one divine transformation cultivator still present, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Jing replied that anyone at that level didn't need food, and to the sect elders matters like spiritual grains were trivial, so they saw no reason to worry. So the sect only sent those without hope of advancement, leaving Golden Core disciples behind to manage the area. They figured a single nascent soul cultivator watching over 8 towns was enough to keep everything stable, but Jiang Li said flatly that they now had a serious problem. Jing admitted it was her failure. Still, she needed to meet Yuan Ling first. Jiang Li told her that Yuan Ling wasn't around. He had already scanned the town with his spiritual sense and found no trace of a Golden Core woman in Upper River Town. However, in Lower River Town, he sensed one, which had to be one of her subordinates. Jing identified her immediately as her junior sister Du stationed there. A short while later, Jiang Li and Jing arrived in Lower River Town. Du was alone in her quarters trying to meditate. She sighed that her spiritual power still wouldn't rise, maybe proving she just wasn't cut out for cultivation. Someone like her, with no real talent, was only dragging the sect down. and maybe it'd be better to work outside, so the capable senior sisters didn't waste time coming to check on her. But Jing Xin interrupted gently, asking who ever said she was a burden. She offered a small smile that carried warmth and regret. Du Xin'er blinked in surprise and asked why she was there after all these years. It was perfect timing since she'd hit another bottleneck in cultivation and had longed for her advice again. Jing Xin suddenly wrapped her arms around her. She confessed that it was her fault, that she had failed in her responsibilities. Du Xin'er insisted she was being too harsh on herself, since it was only cultivation guidance and not such a grave matter. But Jing Xin apologized anyway, her voice soft and heavy. She felt the weight of years and distance, how they'd already drifted into different worlds. It wasn't only Upper River Town that had turned into a city of the dead, but Lower River Town too. Du Xin'er pressed Jing Xin about why she couldn't stop crying, and Jing Xin apologized, saying she had lost control of herself for a moment. Du Xin'er mentioned she hadn't made introductions yet, and turned to ask who the gentleman was. Jing Xin explained that he was Jiang Li, the current emperor. Du Xin'er leaned closer and murmured that he was the same emperor Jing Xin often mentioned in passing. Jing Xin managed a bitter smile that didn't reach her eyes. Du Xin'er faced Jiang Li and remarked that she had heard tales of his unmatched power, the strongest across the 9 provinces, omnipotent enough to pierce the heavens and plunge into hell, and she asked if those stories were true. He admitted that he once believed he could accomplish anything, but he had already learned he could neither ascend to immortality nor reverse life and death. He was still just a man after all. But he brushed off the topic and asked her where Yuanling had gone, since they didn't find her in Upper River Town, and Du Xin'er explained that she wasn't sure because Yuanling had been leaving town a lot lately, disappearing for months at a time. But she would return for the fall harvest, which was due in just a few days. Jiang Li and Jing Xin shared a silent nod of understanding. Jing Xin said she wanted to check Lower River Town so they'd stay in the area for a while. And they could keep Du Xin'er company too, and Du Xin'er said that was great, since she could finally learn cultivation from her again. Then she looked at Jiang Li and asked if he'd be willing to guide her in her cultivation, and he agreed. She said she'd been stuck at the Golden Core stage for a long time, and wondered why that was despite all her effort, asking if she simply lacked talent. Jiang Li told her it was normal, that cultivation couldn't be forced and progress would come in its own time, saying he'd experienced the same thing himself. She asked if that was truly so, and admitted she felt a flicker of confidence return. Jiang Li, however, quietly pondered how a corpse could even advance in cultivation. As evening fell, Jiang Li walked alone to an open space by the cliff. He activated his talisman and called for Zhang Konghu, leader of the Imperial Palace. Zhang Konghu responded, and when Jiang Li told him to head to the southern border to find the Gu clan, he asked what he needed them for. Jiang Li instructed him to investigate what cultivation level was necessary to create a Gu worm capable of letting the dead move freely, unaware of their own death. He urged him to move quickly, and Zhang Konghu agreed. Jing Xin then asked Jiang Li if he could scan the other 6 towns with his spiritual sense, since hers only reached Upper and Lower River towns. He told her everything looked normal and that everyone was alive, and she exhaled in relief. She mentioned she'd always been curious how far his spiritual sense could stretch and asked if he could extend it to cover all of 8 towns, but he said he didn't know since there were only 8 towns there. She wondered aloud if it could reach even further, to countless towns. Then he said Yuanling had finally returned. Jing Xin's face hardened immediately. Yuanling soared overhead, laughing that she hadn't drunk enough yet and could still drink more, planning to grab some spirit stones to buy more booze. To her surprise, Jing Xin suddenly seized her by the throat. Yuanling was dragged into a house. She was hurled into a pitch-dark room. She snapped, demanding to know who dared to assault her here in the mortal paradise. Jing Xin demanded she explain where she had been and why she'd been gone for months. Jiang Li recognized her instantly and realized what was going on, understanding now why she hadn't been affected by the mortal fairy. Yuanling blinked and asked if that was her senior sister Jing Xin and how she'd ended up there. She pleaded for a moment to explain, saying there was nothing in those towns but mortals who only farmed, so she went off to have fun in the Mengjiang dynasty for a while. But she always came back for the fall harvest, and Jing Xin could check. She had delivered the spiritual grains on time every single year. Jing Xin reflected bitterly that it was exactly because the spiritual grains had never been a problem that no one looked deeper. It would have been better if there had been an issue, then the truth about those 2 towns would have come out. She asked why not a single living soul remained in both Upper and Lower River towns. Yuanling smirked and asked if she had found out already. She said she hadn't meant for it to happen. She only borrowed a little from the spiritual grain funds for her trips to Mengjiang, just a small bit. But some loudmouths complained that she gave too few spirit stones and refused to work, and she lost her temper and killed a few. Then someone threatened to report her to the sect, and in a panic, she killed them all. Afraid of being discovered, she used corpse goo worms to control their Dantians so they could still cultivate spiritual grains like before. Jingxin trembled, wondering if she had really done all that just for such a petty reason. Jiang Li exhaled quietly, the sound sharp in the silence. Jingxin then asked about Lower River Town and how she could slaughter her own junior sister Dushiner. Yuanling said she had no choice. The town was too close, and she was scared Dushiner would notice, so she killed her too, wiping out the entire town to keep things quiet. But Jingxin should look, she said, because now they could keep producing spiritual grains without needing spirit stones, and wasn't that convenient? Jingxin realized that for 3 years, the sect had kept sending spirit stones for Yuanling to buy grain, but of course she hadn't needed to pay the dead, so she spent it all indulging herself in Mengjiang instead. Jiang Li was thinking that Yuanling manipulated them through the corpse goo worms inside their Dantians, but each villager also carried a worm in their mind space. That was what controlled their thoughts. Yuanling said that Jingxin was kind-hearted, so she begged for one chance at forgiveness and swore she would change for good. But Jingxin told her there would be no next time, and asked if she hadn't realized she was already dead too. Jiang Li silently confirmed it. Yuanling was a corpse herself, bound by a goo worm and blind to her own death. Meanwhile, back in the mortal paradise, Xuan Ai had returned. She muttered that it couldn't be helped, and she had to act sooner than planned. And after 50 years of cultivating the goo, it was finally time to use it. To all her senior sisters in the mortal paradise, she said they shouldn't blame her. If anyone deserved blame, it should be Jiang Li. Yuanling pressed if she was dead, and how that could even be real. She turned to Jingxin, demanding to know if she was trying to freak her out. Jiang Li figured she had no idea she was already gone, so expecting anything useful from her was pointless. He had already stitched together the story. First off, Yuanling wiped out the townsfolk, then used the goo worms to turn them into puppets, keeping the place running. But with her level, she could only command their bodies with Dantian goo worms, just their motions, nothing more. After that, someone took her out and stuffed a goo worm in her too, adding consciousness goo worms to everyone else to steer their thoughts. Just like that, the whole town looked alive again, and even someone at the nascent soul stage wouldn't catch the difference. He mulled over what the puppet master's endgame might be. Out of nowhere, Jingxin requested a moment alone with Yuanling and asked to step out. He noted that her smirk crawled under his skin, so he went along and told her he'd wait a mile off. Everything fell silent once he left. Then, Yuanling's scream tore through the town. Jingxin's dress came back streaked in blood. She remarked that they should clean up a little. Yuanling's body had vanished. Moments later, she rejoined Jiang Li. She thanked him for sticking around. He mentioned that something seemed off with Dushiner. Meanwhile, Dushiner was over at the storage house. She was shoving a barrel of rice toward a massive container. She scooped up a bowl from it. Then she dumped it into the big container. She moved like she was half asleep. Jingxin commented that she looked unaware they were even there. The townsfolk usually husk the spiritual grains into rice and stash it here. It was their entire stockpile. That job had a handler, meaning Dushiner didn't have to do the labor. She was just supposed to watch over it. She asked why Dushiner bothered to mix that barrel in herself. She pointed out that it was only filled with plain spiritual rice. But Jiang Li warned her to check it with her spiritual sense. It might be beyond her to handle. She felt that his warning only made her want to push harder. Then she noticed something off. It resisted her probing. She decided to apply more pressure, refusing to back down. When her sense finally pierced through, disgust twisted her gut. She nearly gagged. It wasn't rice in that barrel. It was goo worms made to look like it. She immediately demanded to know what Dushiner was doing. Dushiner replied that wasn't it sect practice to mix that barrel in, and Jingxin pressed who told her that, and since when Mortal Paradise had such a rule. Jiang Li questioned if she knew what it really was. Dushiner responded that it was just spiritual rice and asked if there was anything else inside. Jiang Li stated he needed a word with her senior sister and told her to wait outside, and she agreed. A few moments later, Jiang Li checked the cooked rice. He remarked that someone had twisted Dushiner's perception, making her believe it was just a bucket of regular spiritual rice, and he figured that it reeked of the corpse goo's handiwork. Jingxin grimaced the moment her eyes landed on the cooked rice. She muttered that those goo worms still wriggled after being cooked, looking even more vigorous than before. Jiang Li explained that someone had been blending goo worms into spiritual rice and feeding them to the people in the mortal paradise, though he hadn't figured out what purpose those worms served. Jingxin felt her stomach twist over that. Out of nowhere, Zhang Konghu reached out to Jiang Li. He reported that he had located the Gu clan, and Jiang Li noted that the timing couldn't be better. Zhang Konghu mentioned that the clan claimed it took at least a nascent soul stage cultivator to make corpses move like the living using corpse goo, yet their strongest members barely reached that level. He He pressed further, asking who could study the art of Gu, and they told him only those with access to the ancient tomes and the ancestral shrine could, since the texts were so tightly guarded that outsiders had no chance of learning them. But he admitted that he tried his luck and managed to sneak out the tomes unnoticed, though naturally he put them back afterward. Jiang Li stayed silent. Zheng Konghu recalled another point, saying the Gu clan confessed that the heart-controlling Gu, strictly banned in their ancestral rules, had gone missing, and now they were hiding in their mountain, begging the imperial palace to spread a warning to keep everyone alert. Jiang Li inquired about that heart-controlling Gu, and Zheng Konghu explained that the clan described it as horrifying. If someone swallowed it, even a cultivator at the nascent soul or divine transformation stage would have their mind bound by the worm's master without ever realizing it. Jiang Li pressed again, confirming if that was the heart-controlling Gu he meant. Zheng Konghu confirmed it. The one cocooned like spiritual rice, thin as a strand of hair, quiet in water, alive in fire. And he threw in a question about where Jiang Li had found such a large bowl. Meanwhile, Jingxin's strength drained away, and her knees buckled as their exchange continued. She fretted over how many years they had been slipping Gu worms into the rice, how many junior sisters had unknowingly eaten them, whether any fasting elders had sampled the grains, and how many souls in the mortal paradise now carried the heart-controlling Gu inside them. Qing Yudao lingered at the mortal paradise. She wondered aloud why Jingxin hadn't returned yet, if she'd run into trouble, and if she wasn't right that nothing should have gone wrong with Jiang Li himself around. Then, out of nowhere, Xuan Ai declared that they weren't coming back. It had been ages since they last crossed paths, and once Qing Yudao recognized her, she demanded to know what she was doing there. Xuan Ai mentioned being exiled from the mortal paradise and asked what brought her back. Xuan Ai teased if she wouldn't even offer a junior sister greeting, claiming to be heartbroken as she called her senior sister Qing Yu. Qing Yudao coolly questioned if she was still bitter over being expelled from the sect. She pressed if Xuan Ai was planning some coup and still brooding about the leadership. Xuan Ai snapped that she refused to accept it because both of them were at the integration stage, equal in strength, then demanded why everyone hadn't chosen her. Qing Yudao shot back that mortal paradise had no space for scheming or petty plotting. Anyone obsessed with power, lost in indulgence, throwing her weight around among disciples, and filled with worldly greed instead of purity. Of course, she'd never win hearts. Xuan Ai sneered, repeating if she said she wouldn't win hearts, then shrugged that she couldn't care less anymore. She leaned in and asked if she even knew that after leaving the sect, she'd wandered everywhere and stumbled upon the Gu clan's secluded domain. To the Gu clan, capped at the nascent soul stage, someone like her in the integration stage was a wolf among sheep, roaming wherever she pleased. She picked up every Gu technique she fancied and took whatever Gu worm she wanted. Qing Yudao demanded if she'd learned their techniques and returned for revenge. Xuan Ai dismissed her guess, saying she was wrong, that she'd started working 50 years ago, from the roots, from places she'd never think to look. Meanwhile, Jiang Li and Jingxin were still inside the storage house. Jiang Li questioned if the Gu clan mentioned a way to break the heart-controlling Gu. Zheng Konghu explained it worked like the others. Either its master willingly lifted it, or the worm had to be killed, so the heart-controlling Gu didn't affect those in the transcending tribulation stage since the tribulation lightning wiped it out. Jiang Li promised to elaborate later and ended the call. He observed that the townsfolk still moved about normally, meaning the heart-controlling Gu hadn't been triggered yet. Until the final step, nothing was set in stone, and her fellow sect members still counted on her to save them. With him there, the situation could still turn. Jingxin agreed quietly that he was right. Nothing was final until the end, and since the puppet master hadn't yet unleashed the Gu, they must be waiting for the right moment. Mistakes could still be fixed. Hope still lingered. She thanked him softly. Back at the mortal paradise, Qing Yudao was still facing Xuan Ai. She demanded if the heart-controlling Gu worms had been hidden inside the spiritual rice. Xuan Ai remarked that ever since returning from the Gu clan, she'd been mulling over how to make use of the knowledge she'd stolen. And she actually credited that clever fool Yuan Ling for sparking the idea. Her death at her hands ended up being mildly worthwhile. Qing Yudao realized it had been 50 years without her noticing. She'd failed to recognize that every townsman was long gone and had completely overlooked the issue with the spiritual rice. Xuan Ai pressed her, wondering if she wasn't curious about how many people in the mortal paradise had eaten the cursed rice over those 50 years. She invited her to come and witness the result of her handiwork. A crowd of disciples instantly swarmed outside her residence. Qing Yudao guessed that all those people had consumed Gu worms and noticed 2 individuals among them who'd already reached the integration stage. She muttered that she regretted showing mercy back then and should have ended her with one blow. But it wasn't too late to purge the sect now. Xuan Ai replied that with her grandeur, she had no illusions about winning in a direct fight. But those disciples danced to her tune. Every one of them was bound by the heart-controlling goo, their lives dangling at her leisure. If Qing Yudao dared strike her, she'd drive one of them to self-destruction instantly. Qing Yudao froze on the spot. She clenched her jaw and tightened her fist. Xuan Ai teased if she doubted her and mentioned there was proof. She urged her to go ahead and rip out the heart. Qing Yudao snapped her name with disdain. Out of nowhere, the disciples started begging her to save them. Qing Yudao wondered if Xuan Ai had loosened her hold for a moment or was just pulling the strings to make them cry out that way. But all she could hear was the endless chorus of pleas for their leader's mercy. She demanded to know what Xuan Ai wanted. If it was the leader's seat, she could have it, all of it, just spare those disciples. Xuan Ai chuckled about the leader's position, admitting she once craved it deeply, but now her sights were set elsewhere. Meanwhile, Jiang Li and Jing arrived outside the mortal paradise. She asked what was going on and why the protective formation barred them from entry. He noted that legend claimed the mortal paradise's barrier had never been breached and checked if that was true. She confirmed it, saying the sect had stood for tens of thousands of years, famous for its mystery and breathtaking splendor. Many had tried to glimpse its beauty, stirring countless crises, yet everyone was crushed by its defensive grate. Her master would never seal her out, so she wondered if someone had stolen the formation's core. Suddenly, Xuan Ai's voice echoed that they were already too late.